It was supposed to be a peaceful weekend getaway. My friend Liam and I had rented a small remote cabin deep within the dense pine forests of Oregon. There was no cell service, no Wi-Fi, and the nearest neighbor was at least 20 miles away. We wanted total isolation, but looking back, that isolation was our biggest mistake. The first 2 days passed without incident, but on Sunday night, around 2:30 am, a heavy, unnatural silence fell over the forest. Usually, you could hear the constant chirping of crickets or the rustling of nocturnal animals, but tonight, it was dead silent. The air outside felt incredibly thick, frozen, and ominous. I was lying awake in my bed staring at the wooden ceiling when I heard a faint scratching sound against the exterior logs of the cabin. Scratch, scratch, scratch. My heart skipped a beat. I sat up, listening closely. The scratching stopped, replaced by a sound that made my blood run cold. From the pitch-black woods, just 20 yards from the cabin window, came a voice. "Hey, open the door. I got lost out here. It's freezing." My jaw dropped. The voice sounded identical to Liam. It had the exact same pitch, the same accent, and the same lazy drawl. For a split second, I actually believed it. I stood up and started walking toward the front door to unlock it. But as my hand touched the cold metal lock, a sudden realization hit me like a physical blow. I slowly turned my head and looked toward the couch across the living room. Liam was fast asleep right there, wrapped in his blanket, snoring softly. If Liam was inside the cabin, sleeping right in front of me, who was calling my name from the woods? A wave of primal, paralyzing fear washed over me. I backed away from the door, my chest heaving, my eyes locked on the frosted window. The voice outside spoke again, but this time, something changed. The tone became slightly distorted, like a corrupted audio file. "Hey, open the door, open the door, open the door." It began repeating the same phrase over and over, its voice glitching, changing from Liam's voice into a deep, hollow, mechanical rattle. It didn't sound human anymore. It sounded like a monster trying to practice human speech, failing miserably. Suddenly, a massive, heavy thud shook the entire cabin. Something incredibly heavy had slammed against the front door. The wooden frame groaned under the immense pressure, and the temperature inside the room plummeted so fast that my breath turned into white fog. Driven by pure terror, I grabbed Liam by the shoulder and shook him awake. "Liam, wake up. Don't make a sound," I whispered frantically, covering his mouth. Liam opened his eyes, confused and annoyed, but the moment he heard the distorted, unnatural voice outside repeating his own words, his face turned completely pale. Then came the final horror. Through the small glass window pane next to the door, a face slowly pressed against the glass. But it wasn't a face. It was a towering, pale, featureless entity. It had no eyes, no nose, just a wide, jagged, gaping black slit where a mouth should be. Its impossibly long skeletal fingers tapped slowly against the glass. Tap, tap, tap. We hid behind the kitchen counter, holding our breath, praying to stay alive. The creature continued to mimic Liam's voice, scratching and pounding on the walls until exactly 3:15 am. Then, with a long distorted shriek, it melted back into the shadows of the pine trees. As soon as the sun rose, we threw our bags into the truck and drove away, never looking back. We left half of our gear behind. When we later reported the incident to the local park rangers, they looked at us with pale faces. They told us that over the last 10 years, dozens of hikers had vanished in those exact woods without a trace. The terrifying truth is, those people didn't get lost. They just heard a familiar voice calling their name from the dark, and they made the fatal mistake of opening the door. I never believed in ghosts, monsters, or any of the creepy stories people tell around campfires. That changed during the winter of 2022. My name is Ethan, and I was working as a delivery driver in a small town in Montana. One December evening, a heavy snowstorm rolled in. The roads were nearly empty and visibility was terrible. Around 9 p.m., I received one final delivery request to an old farmhouse located far outside town. The GPS led me down a narrow dirt road surrounded by endless fields covered in snow. After 20 minutes of driving, I finally saw the house. It looked abandoned. The wooden walls were gray and rotten. Several windows were boarded shut. A rusty swing moved slowly in the freezing wind. Yet according to the app, someone still lived there. I grabbed the package and walked to the front porch. Knock, knock, the door creaked open by itself. Hello? I called. No answer. Just as I was about to leave, an elderly woman appeared from the darkness inside. She was extremely pale and wore an old-fashioned black dress. Without saying a word, she pointed toward a table in the hallway. I placed the package there. As I turned to leave, she suddenly spoke. Whatever you do, don't stay here after midnight. I laughed nervously. What? She stared directly into my eyes. Don't stay after midnight. Then she slowly closed the door. The entire drive home, I couldn't stop thinking about what she said. A week later, another delivery request appeared for the same address. Against my better judgment, I accepted it. This time the storm was even worse. When I arrived, the farmhouse looked darker than before. No lights were visible inside. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. The door swung open. The hallway was empty. The table where I left the previous package was covered in dust. The package itself hadn't moved. A terrible feeling settled in my stomach. Something wasn't right. Then I heard it. Knock. A faint knocking sound. Not from the door. From beneath the floor. Knock, knock, knock. I froze. The sound came directly underneath my feet. Someone or something was trapped below the house. A weak voice echoed upward. Help me. I nearly dropped the package. The voice sounded like a young woman. Please, let me out. Every instinct told me to run. But curiosity won. I followed the sound into the kitchen where a large wooden trapdoor sat beneath an old rug. The knocking became frantic. Bang, bang, bang. Please let Emmy out. I grabbed the rusted handle and pulled. The trapdoor opened with a loud screech. Below was a staircase descending into complete darkness. The smell that came from below was unbearable. Rot, decay, death. I shined my flashlight downward. At first, I saw nothing. Then two pale eyes reflected the light. A woman stood motionless at the bottom of the stairs. Her skin was gray. Her hair hung in tangled clumps, and her mouth stretched into an impossibly wide smile. Relief flooded her face. You opened it. The instant she spoke, every light in the house went out. Darkness swallowed everything. Then another voice whispered behind me. No, I spun around. The elderly woman stood in the kitchen doorway. Her face was filled with terror. You weren't supposed to open it. The creature below the stairs began climbing upward. Slowly, one step at a time. Crack, crack, crack. Its bones snapped with every movement. The smile widened further and further until the corners of its mouth tore open. I ran. The elderly woman screamed. The thing shrieked so loudly that every window in the house exploded. I dove through the front door and sprinted toward my truck. As I started the engine, I looked back. The creature stood in the doorway watching me, smiling. Its eyes never blinked. I sped away and never returned. The next day, I reported everything to the local sheriff. His face went pale. He told me that farmhouse had officially been abandoned since 1987. The owner, an elderly woman, had died there decades ago. And according to town records, a young woman had vanished from that property shortly before the house was abandoned. Neither body was ever found. To this day, whenever a snowstorm hits, I sometimes wake up around midnight, and from somewhere beneath my bedroom floor, I hear 3 slow knocks. Knock, knock, knock. Everyone in my town knew about the house on Willow Street. It sat at the very end of the road, hidden behind dead trees and an iron fence covered in rust. The house was over 100 years old. Its windows were black, its paint was peeling, and the front porch looked ready to collapse at any moment. People called it the Hollow House. Nobody had lived there for decades. At least that's what everyone believed. When I was 19, my friends dared me to spend one night inside. I laughed and agreed. At exactly 10 p.m., I climbed over the fence carrying a flashlight, a sleeping bag, and a video camera. The moment I stepped onto the property, I noticed something strange. The air felt colder. Not normal cold. The kind of cold that makes your stomach tighten. I told myself it was just nerves. The front door was already slightly open. As I pushed it wider, the hinges let out a long, painful creak. The smell inside was horrible. Dust, mold, rotting wood. My flashlight illuminated a long hallway covered in faded wallpaper. Everything was silent. Too silent. I walked through the house recording everything. The kitchen was empty. The dining room was empty. The bedrooms upstairs were empty. Around midnight, I settled into the living room and prepared to spend the rest of the night there. That's when I heard the first sound. Footsteps. Slow footsteps coming from the second floor. Thump, thump, thump. I froze. I was supposed to be alone. The footsteps continued. Someone was walking directly above me. I grabbed my flashlight and forced myself upstairs. The second floor hallway was empty. Every room was empty. The footsteps had stopped. I searched every corner. Nothing. Trying to calm down, I returned downstairs. The moment my foot touched the living room floor, the footsteps started again. Directly above me. Thump, thump, thump. My heart began racing. I ran upstairs once more. Again, nothing. No person. No animal. No explanation. At 1:17 a.m., things became worse. I was sitting on the floor checking my camera footage when I heard a faint voice. A woman. Whispering. I couldn't understand the words. The whispering seemed to come from inside the walls themselves. I followed the sound into a small bedroom. The wallpaper there was badly damaged. The whispering became louder. I pressed my ear against the wall. The voice suddenly stopped. Then another voice whispered directly into my other ear. "Don't listen to her." I jumped back and nearly dropped my flashlight. There was nobody behind me. Nobody. I ran from the room and slammed the door shut. As I stood in the hallway catching my breath, a loud bang echoed through the house. Every door upstairs slammed shut at the exact same moment. Bang. The sound was so violent the entire hallway shook. I wanted to leave. I should have left. But curiosity kept me there. At around 2:30 a.m., I discovered a small door hidden beneath the staircase. I hadn't noticed it earlier. It led to a narrow basement. The darkness below seemed almost unnatural. I pointed my flashlight downward. Nothing, just old stone walls. Then I saw something scratched into the wooden steps. 3 words, "Stay out of here." My hands started shaking. I turned around to leave. The basement door slammed shut behind me. The sound echoed like a gunshot. I was trapped. Panic exploded through my body. I pulled on the door. It wouldn't move. Then I heard breathing. Not my breathing. Someone else's. Slow, heavy, standing somewhere in the darkness behind me. I slowly turned around. At first I saw nothing. Then my flashlight beam landed on a figure standing in the far corner. A tall man wearing an old black suit. His face was completely pale. His eyes were empty black holes. He wasn't moving. He wasn't blinking. He was simply watching me. For several seconds, neither of us moved. Then his mouth opened, far wider than any human mouth should. And he smiled. The flashlight died instantly. Darkness swallowed the room. I heard footsteps rushing toward me. I screamed and threw myself against the basement door. Suddenly it burst open. I stumbled into the hallway and sprinted for the front entrance. Behind me, dozens of footsteps pounded through the house. Not one person. Dozens, as if an entire crowd was chasing me. I reached the front door. The moment I stepped outside, everything stopped. Silence. Complete silence. I didn't look back. I ran to my car and drove away. The next morning, I returned with 2 police officers. I wanted proof that I wasn't crazy. But when we entered the house, the basement door was gone. Completely gone. The space beneath the stairs was solid wall. There was no sign a door had ever existed there. One of the officers laughed and said I must have imagined it. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was scared and confused. But as we were leaving, I noticed something scratched into the dusty wall beside the staircase. Fresh scratches. 3 words. "Welcome back soon."